Oh, yeah.
So, His Holiness, we'll start right away. Do you hear me, His Holiness asking?
That's it. So
the teaching to the Tibetan youth, this is the second day of the teaching.
So
the destiny fulfilled. We'll continue with the remaining part of it. And I usually do the Bodhichitta ceremony, usually after such teachings. So usually I talk about Bodhichitta, this spirit of enlightenment, and the view of emptiness. And so I thought this time we would do the all-encompassing yoga mind, which usually is done in connection with initiations, although there is no daily yoga practice here. So we'll do this together at the end, the all-encompassing yoga mind. As you have heard, Master Vasubandhu mentions in his Abhidhamma Karika that the teaching of the Buddha is twofold, those of the scriptures and realizations. So the teacher, the founding teacher, Buddha's teachings are twofold, and to preserve it, there are only two means, which is to study and practice in order to preserve and teach it. And therefore, the debate through logic and reasoning becomes very crucial in this process of preservation of the teaching of the Buddha through study and practice. And so we, as followers of the Nalanda tradition, for over 1,000 years, we have practiced this tradition, just as it was advised by Master Chandarakshita, the great abbot. And therefore, in Tibet, how many scholar adepts from the different Tibetan Buddhist traditions, Sajjan Nyingma, Gyalo, Kagyu, and so forth, have come. So all of them first pursued study, and having studied them, whatever they have studied, they put into practice, into their own experience. And therefore, Master Vasubandhu's using of the term only is an exclusionary term. So there is no other way to preserve the teaching except through study and practice. And so all the followers of the Tibetan Buddhist traditions do go through this process of study and practice, and therefore it is very important to do study and practice the teaching. So we are at the third section of the so the third section is how I practiced day and night and dedicated to virtue for the teachings. Once the scripture had become a treasure of instructions and so forth, the first verse. And so in this there's mention of the two systems of Mahayana, which are the perfection vehicle and the Vajrayana. And then the two, so the common path common to these two systems of Mahayana are those of the Bodhichitta and the view of emptiness. And then the two stages of uncommon path, mainly referring to the Samaja, Tantra's generation, and the completion stages. And so, in the works of Master Tsongkhapa, he writes about the four different classes of Tantra in his exposition on the stages of the mantra path. And then with regard to the highest Yoga Tantra, and particularly Guhya Samaja Tantra, as he says that he found all the essential points of practices of the completion stage. And so you will find his explanation of this in the bright lamp of the 5 stages. And then the essence of that is contained in the text called Rimnga Denzok, practicing all the 5 stages in one sitting. And so in the bright lamp illuminating the 5 stages by Master Tsongkhapa, when it comes to explaining about the union of the two truths with regard to the completion stage, and his explanation is very unique in that the two truths referring to those of the illusory body and the clear light. And so his explanation is something unique. In the past, in Yerpa in Tibet, the monks from Gyutu had come there on their retreat or something, and we had a discussion. And the abbot of Gyutu was Minya Tseden, Venerable Tseden from Minyak. And we had a debate about whether the illusory body becomes manifest outside this body or within the body of the practitioner. So Minya Tseden said that when I reach that stage of illusory body, I will actually have a dignified state of, and then we'll be able to experience that at that point of time. So after the dissolution of the 3 visions of whitish appearance, reddish increase, and the blackish near attainment, then you arise into that illusory body of the practitioner. And so, on the basis of the subtle energy, which is the mount of the clear light mind, and so that wind energy becomes the substantial cause, becomes the illusory body, which until the 3 visions are purified, becomes those contaminated or impure illusory body. And then with the help of the clear light mind, and by purifying those impurities on the illusory body, you reach the pure illusory body. And in this way, the trainee level union of the illusory body and the clear light is reached. And so Rinpoche went through all these practices. He thoroughly examined them, and through his experience. And so at the time of the clinical death, so to say, of Master Tsongkhapa, it is very clear that he had attained the clear light, and arising from that clear light state, he arose into the illusory body instead of the actual intermediate state or Bharto. So, with regard to the generation and completion stages of the highest yoga tantra, he studied them and then integrated all these teachings within himself and gained the true experience of them. And so that is the case with Tsongkhapa. So once the scriptures had become treasury instructions, I put them into practice by familiarizing myself with the path that is complete in all the essential aspects, the path that is common to the true system of Mahayana and the two stages of uncommon path. Thinking this over, how well my destiny was fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble treasure. So it is very important for us to study Tsongkhapa's bright lamp on the 5 stages. It is said that in river Ganges, that a river Ganges of Bodhisattva's prayers are contained within the aspirations to uphold the sacred Dharma. So I dedicate any root of virtue I accumulated for the teachings of the sage to spread. So in the beginning of that text, he says, in the beginning I sought extensive learning. In the middle, all scriptures taught as instructions. In the end, I practiced day, all and night. I dedicated it all for the teaching to flourish. And so just as it is said in the beginning, it is said here, thinking this over, oh well, my destiny was fulfilled. Thank you very much, noble Lord of Wisdom Treasure. This concludes the 3rd session, how in the end I practice and the enlightenment, dedicate all virtue. So I just wanted to crack a joke here. Rinpoche, having talked about Rinpoche, Tsongkhapa's, Master Tsongkhapa's great qualities, I also wish to tell you that I am actually from the same native land, home town, or in order to vastly increase my own virtue and show the many fortunate beings having clear discernment, the right entrance to the Dharma in a manner appropriate for them. I wrote this description of my spiritual training and realization. And so, in short, this text shows how he pursued the study of the teaching of the Buddha and how he applied them within himself and how he gained the experience by the accumulation of virtue thus attained. May all beings ascend by these same steps and, having become able to uphold the unexalted yogic discipline of the Buddha, enter the path that pleases the victorious ones. Written So this is colophon written by the well-read Eastern Bhikshu Tsongkhapa Losang Chakpai Pel at the triumph of the Virtue Monastery on the Great Nomad Mountain. The scribe was Geshe Rinchen Pel. May the precious teaching flourish everywhere. And so the Buddha himself appeared as Supreme Nirmanakaya, and then went through all the enlightened deeds of a Buddha, such as giving teachings and then finally passing into nirvana. So accordingly, the teaching of the Buddha, the followers of the teaching of the Buddha in India, those of the Nalanda masters and the Tibetan masters of the past, of course, the Buddha himself showed the enlightened deeds of passing away, and the followers of the teaching of the Buddha, the great masters of India and so forth, in Tibet, have also done the same. And so, though Tsongkhapa himself also had passed away, he left for us as his legacy the 18 volumes of his writings. And so, as followers of the teacher Tsongkhapa, we must take care of these writings, and particularly the great and the middle level, middle length Lamrim, the stages of the path of enlightenment, and the explanation of Namsha Rigpa, and the 5 stages, the stages of the paths of the mantra, yana, and so forth. So Je Rinpoche himself, with regard to the philosophical view of emptiness, he follows mainly in the Master Nagarjuna's tradition. And so the followers of Master Tsongkhapa must study the 6 collections of writings by Master Nagarjuna. And then, as it is usually said that Master Nagarjuna's teachings were clarified further by Master Chandrakirti, as we find mentioned in the praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination. So we should study Master Chandrakirti's texts as well. It is said in this praise to the Buddha for teaching dependent origination by Master Tsongkhapa, illuminated by the garland of the white light, vice verse number 50 of Chandra's well-uttered insights. Chandra, who is stainless, wisdom orb is full, who glides freely across the scriptures. And then, as I mentioned yesterday also, at the end of the 6th chapter of Madhyamaka Avatara, so it is mentioned that the 6th Bodhisattva on the 6th ground, on the first ground, through the force of the conventional truth, journeys to cessation. So as I mentioned also, I too hope to reach that stage. And then it also mentions in verse number 225 and 220, he's also quoted the verses 224, 225, 226. And so all of these practices that we do is in order to help other sentient beings. So there is no other, nothing other that we have to do except to serve others. As it is prayed, I do pray, use this prayer and say this prayer, as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too abide to dispel the darkness of to dispel the miseries of transmigration. And as Master Tsongkhapa also makes this prayer at the end of his Lamrim text, so using the skillful means drawn by the strong force of compassion, may I clear the darkness from the minds of all beings. With the points of the path, as I have discerned them, may I uphold the Buddha's teaching for a very long time. So this ends, with this we conclude the teaching on the destiny fulfilled. So all sentient beings, without having to reason out to anybody, we instinctively have this wish to have happiness and avoid suffering. So even an insect, down to the insects, there is this wish to have happiness and avoid suffering. So the difference between the animals and human beings is that we have this marvelous human brain with which we can think through, so that we can see what are the causes of suffering, what are the causes of happiness. So with this human brain, we can actually contemplate on these. So though everyone naturally have the wish to have happiness and not suffering, but for the animals, they may not know the means to overcome or avoid this causes of suffering, and the means to cultivate those means which gives happiness. But in India, the tradition of ahimsa has already been there for over 3,000 years. And so ahimsa is rooted in our compassion and love. And even those atheist religious traditions such as Christianity, Judaism, and so forth, they believe in a God, a creator, and that God is of infinite love. And such an infinite love God, a creator God, is said to have created this world. And therefore the practitioners have this the practice of compassion and love as their main practice. So even in the case of the atheist, the theistic religious traditions, to practice, for them to practice love and compassion is based on their faith in God, the Creator. But in India, particularly the non-theistic religious traditions like Buddhism, as I already mentioned yesterday also, just as I quoted this statement by the Buddha, O monks and scholars, just as gold is tested by burning, rubbing, and cutting, likewise you should examine my teaching, and then believe or accept my teaching. And then the Buddha also had said, I have shown you the path to liberation, but the liberation is in your hands. It's dependent on you. And so, as I said, that the teaching of the Buddha is twofold, those of the scriptures and the realizations. And so we have very extensive teachings of the Buddha that we have in the scriptures. So masters like Nagarjuna and so forth have thoroughly explained the extensive conduct and that of the profound view, the teachings of the Buddha. And so the writings of Master Nagarjuna, such as the 6 collections of reasoning and so forth, are still extant for us to access. So as Tibetans, we do not have to, there's no need for us to resort to any other language, but these are in our own language. So we are very fortunate for that reason. And so when you think about this, we can feel how kind, we can feel grateful to all the translators who translated all these teachings from the Indian languages into our language with the help of Indian panditas. And so we have the resources with us in our own language. So how to create, cultivate the causes for happiness and to overcome or eliminate the obstacles to that goal of happiness. So other religious traditions do teach about practicing love, compassion, and not to hurt others. But in Buddhism, we have the teachings, the extensive teachings pertaining to the means of overcoming the suffering, how to avoid those negative actions, and how to cultivate and promote those of love and compassion, which are causes of happiness. And then to these over 200 volumes of Tengyur, the translated exegetical treatises of the Indian masters in Tibetan. And then to these treatises, the Tibetan masters have written their commentaries and sub-commentaries and so forth. Of course, all the different Tibetan Buddhist orders, Nyingma, Sakya, Kagyu, and within the Kagyu, Drukpa and Kagyu, or Jigung Kagyu, or Taklong Kagyu, we make differences like that because of slight differences in the deity yoga practices of Tantrayana. And then we have some degree of sectarianism on the basis of these different lineages of the teachings of the Buddha that are in Tibet. In Tantrayana, there is a practice to do wrathful practices in order to overcome or crush the evil beings who are or who hold or evil thoughts and intentions and do actions against the dharma and so forth. And so these means somehow were used in our different traditions to practice sorcery against other followers of the other traditions. And so with regard to the sentient beings, there's no one whom we should consider as our sworn enemies. But today, in the presence of all the protectors, I invite the world to the guests to be guests at the festival of the Sugadahut, that is, and in the meantime, to the temporary bliss. May gods, demigods, and all be joyful. And so there's no one we should hold as enemies as such. All sentient beings are objects of our compassion. And so we need to practice love and compassion, and throughout our lives, not just this one alone, we should practice the Bodhichitta. And so for that, studying Bodhisattva Charyavatara, or the Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, is very important. And also Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, as well as the Master Shantakirti's writings of like Madhyamaka Avatar and so forth, are very important to study. So studying these texts, the great treatises written by great masters, should not be confined to the monks and nuns alone, but even the lay people, you can study them. Of course, when it comes to debating, perhaps the monks and nuns have a special kind of a responsibility for that, but in order to create calm, relaxed, and a peaceful mind, these texts are very important. As I mentioned yesterday, the chapters 6 and 8 of Bodhisattvacharya Avatara are very important for that. Even non-Buddhists, not to mention Buddhists, even non-Buddhists can study and apply these teachings. The followers of the theistic religion, of course, they do pray to their God, the Creator, but they should, if they could also pay attention to the explanations of emotions, the map of emotions and mind in the Buddhist literature, this would also be helpful for them. So in Ladakh, some Ladakhi Muslims do take interest in studying Buddhist texts. Of course, they have their faith. They can keep their faith in Allah. But when it comes to dealing with our emotions, mind, and so forth, if they could study the Buddhist texts on psychology, it would be very good for them. So, though they may keep their faith in Allah, so the best gift or the best present they can give to their Allah is a kind heart, for which they can study from the Buddhist texts. And so we have now a question and answer session. So, as His Holiness said, he'll do the all-encompassing yoga mind. So I did a definition. And I found it good to do this practice of the all-encompassing yoga practice. You don't need to do deity yoga practice here as such. So my main practices are bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness. And so you, my friends, if you follow me, it is very important for you too to practice these two, bodhicitta and the view of emptiness, for which we'll do this all-encompassing mind yoga mind, which comes from tantric texts during the actual initiation process, which follows the preliminary process of the initiations. And so, because I do these practices of bodhicitta and the view of emptiness, I wish to do this here. So first we'll do the conventional bodhicitta meditation. In Madhyamaka Avatara, Master Chandrakirti, in the salutation verse, as compassion alone is accepted to be the seed of the perfect harvest of Buddhahood, the water that nourishes it, and the fruit that is long a source of enjoyment, I will praise compassion at the start of all. And so he doesn't make salutation to any other objects but compassion. So, though we have a very extensive practice of wisdom and insights, but with the help of this compassion, it becomes a cause for that of omniscient state of Buddhahood. Without this compassion, so with regard to bodhicitta, it is said by Shantideva that unless you exchange your joys with the suffering of others, there's leave alone reaching Buddhahood. Even in samsara, you'll not have happiness. And then he also mentions all misery in the world comes from wishing oneself to be happy. All happiness and joy from wishing others to be happy. What need is there more to say? Look at the difference between the Buddhas, who have become enlightened, and us sentient beings who are still left. And so these great enlightened beings have become enlightened because of their practice of compassion. And so Master Chandrakirti praises compassion right at the beginning of his work, the Madhyamaka Avatara. And so all sentient beings, down to the smallest insects and ants and so forth, want happiness and not suffering. Though that is the case, the animals can't do much in terms of creating happiness. But human beings on this earth, 7 billion people, or all of us are same in wanting happiness and not suffering. So with this brain and intelligence that we have the ability to think about the future, along into the future as well. So if you are able to use this constructively for creating a happy life and a peaceful life and peaceful world, peaceful within yourself, peace within yourself, and helping each other, one another. If we could do this without talking about past and future lives or nirvana, liberation, and so forth, but as 7 billion people, if we could live harmoniously, friendly, which is possible to create or to achieve. So we have the resources for creating such a peaceful world, harmonious world, everyone living in being friendly with one another. So even scientists do understand today that they have a new, some kind of a new understanding, an insight that happiness is based on our peace of mind. And so, through the study of psychology that is found in Buddhism, if we could create a peaceful world by practicing love and compassion, that is what we need. And then today, the environmentalists, some environmentalists say that within the next several decades, the world would, the climate condition would be worse. And so while we live, we should not live by abusing one another, but live as kins and siblings through peace of mind, thereby creating a peaceful world. So this is our responsibility, those of us in this generation. So through your own experience, you can share that to the new generation of human beings. So through education, that is to say, in relating relating this through the study of psychology, mind and emotions. So we are not talking about people making people religious or following some kind of a religion, but even without any belief in religion, you can still talk about and create peaceful individuals, peaceful community, and peaceful human society. That is our responsibility. So So the all-encompassing mind yoga mind. As I said yesterday, it is very important to study Bodhisattvacharya Avatara by Shantideva. So all sentient beings, including human beings, want happiness and do not want suffering. And so for them to have happiness, for everyone to have happiness and not suffering, we should make efforts that we don't create karmas that bring suffering, and therefore bring up this sense of loving kindness within yourself. So with regard to conventional bodhicitta, we do pray, may all sentient beings have happiness in its causes, may they not have suffering in its causes, may they have happiness devoid of suffering, and may they not be may they have the equanimity. And so with that as the basis, we should generate bodhicitta, which is accompanied by or complemented by the two factors of wishing others to be free from suffering and turning your mind towards full enlightenment for the benefit of all these sentient beings. And so have this, do your best, or think that you'll do your best to bring happiness to others, or to help others, so that all sentient beings may have happiness and be free from suffering, that they be free from suffering. So, as Buddhists, we should think of becoming a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings in order that we may be able to accomplish these goals of bringing happiness to all sentient beings and free them from suffering. So we are thinking of becoming a Buddha who is qualified with the three Buddha bodies for the benefit of all sentient beings, that I may reach Buddhahood. Just have that determination. And so, most of you may have received initiations. So, for example, if you have received initiation of Avalokiteshvara, for example, you may visualize yourself transforming into Avalokiteshvara, and with this determination to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings, that intention, that mind of enlightenment transforms into a moon disk at your heart, you appearing, or you visualizing yourself as Avalokiteshvara. And then the Master Nagarjuna's 6 texts, as I was mentioning earlier, the 6 collections of reasoning, and also Master Chandrakirti's text, where he said, if the intrinsic characteristics of things were to arise dependently, things would come to be destroyed. And then verse number 35 of chapter 6, verse number 36, empty things, 37, empty things dependent on convergences, such as reflections and so on, are not known. And just as the form just as from an empty thing, like a reflection, a perception can rise that bears its form. Likewise, although all things are empty, they do arise from emptiness in a robust way. And so this shows that things do exist by way of designation. So when you actually, when you try to search for the identity of things and beings, nothing can be found within that objects or beings themselves. But that doesn't mean that things and beings don't exist. They do exist because they affect us. And so what we have to understand is that things do not exist in the ultimate sense. When you do this ultimate probe into the things and beings, nothing can be found as being this or that. You cannot find yourself. You have a sense of I, though. So you are not one with the aggregates, not distinct from the aggregates. You are not in them, they are not in you. You do not possess the aggregates. The Tathagata, what else is Tathagata? This is a verse from Master Nagarjuna's Mula Madhyamaka Karika, Fundamental Treatise of the Middle Way. So the aggregates, the five psychophysical aggregates, are not you, but they are your aggregates. So you do not, you as a person or being, you do not exist apart from these, separate and distinct from these five psychophysical aggregates. So you are not unrelated to the five aggregates. So you do not possess these aggregates intrinsically as well. Then you can say, who am I? Of course, that I, which possesses the psychophysical aggregates, do exist. That I does exist. But when you try to search for its identity within these five psychophysical aggregates, nothing can be pinpointed as being the I. So, as this verse from chapter 22, the first verse from chapter 22 of the fundamental verses of the Middle Way says, you cannot find yourself when you search for yourself, your identity, but you do exist. And Master Chandrakirti also says that things or beings do exist by way of worldly convention. So you do not exist intrinsically or inherently or independently, nor the psychophysical aggregates to have any independent objective existence. And so just remember these lines from Master Chandrakirti's the Entering the Middle Way, and try to see where you are, who you are within these psychophysical aggregates. You will come to a point saying, oh, I do not exist. But that doesn't mean you don't exist at all. But it means that this some kind of a solid, concrete I that you perceive or you have a notion of an I, such an I to exist, that does not exist. And so you meditate on emptiness by rejecting that solid, intrinsic, independently existing I, rejecting that. You focus on emptiness of yourself. And so that mind that is absorbed in emptiness now transforms into a white vajra, five-spoked vajra, standing on the moon disk, which is the conventional bodhicitta, at your heart. That on top of that moon disk, this vajra stands. So this is the ultimate bodhicitta. So, of course, you may not have the real ultimate bodhicitta within yourself, but you should have this strong sense of conviction that called you are absorbed in that meditation on emptiness completely, whereby you feel determined. You determine that you do not exist ultimately. And so, with that, I do find great benefit from meditation on emptiness and bodhicitta. So, in my own life, in my own generation, I have met with all my great masters who have also practiced these two and realized and experienced these two within themselves as well. So, a few years before my late senior tutor Ling Rinpoche passed away, I related my experience of emptiness to him, and Ling Rinpoche became was very pleased, and he also praised me. And he said that I will soon become a space yogi. And that also gave me more encouragement to continue with my practice of meditation on emptiness and bodhicitta. And so all the past masters of our lineage and the actual gurus, our lineage and actual direct gurus have practiced these two bodhicittas, the all-encompassing yoga mind, and became enlightened. And so have a very clear idea of these two, the all-encompassing yoga mind. And now, with His Holiness uttering that, imagine that the Vajra and moon disk at his heart comes down, a replica from that, his heart comes to us and dissolves into us and thereby stabilizes our all-encompassing yoga mind. So this moon disk representing the conventional bodhicitta and the and then the Vajra, the white Vajra, five-spoked Vajra, symbolizing the ultimate bodhicitta. If you can remind yourself of these two principles on a daily basis and think of, reflect on bodhicitta, the two types of bodhicitta, conventional and ultimate bodhicitta, it would be very good. I would like to thank Your Holiness for the extensive and profound teaching. First question comes from Tenzin Hawang, from university student in Bangalore. This is a long life prayer, one verse of His Holiness. Good morning, Your Holiness. Your Holiness, I wish to ask how to request that someone else's wrongdoing may be forgiven. So when someone does something wrong, non-virtuous action, then you should actually feel more compassionate towards them, more compassion to them. So although they do not want suffering but want happiness, but they indulge in all kinds of actions, being rude to others, causing harm and hurting others. These are causes of suffering for themselves. So, for example, the Chinese communists, they abused Tibetans. They used their power, misusing them to Tibetans. So they are objects of our compassion. Master Shandideva says that your enemies, those who cause you suffering and so forth, are your best teacher, because they teach you how to the practice of compassion, the practice of patience. So though they want happiness and do not want suffering, they are ignorant about the causes bringing about happiness and those causes causing suffering. And therefore, they become especially objects of compassion. Next is Chimil Hamu from Tibetan Medical Institute, Dharamsala. Buddhism teaches that whatever happiness or suffering we experience is a result of our past karma. Does that mean that we cannot set any other goal for our lives? So our pain and pleasure based on this body, our relatives, family members, and environment are the results of our karmas. But the pain and pleasure that we experience now in this life and in the future are dependent on our own actions as human beings. Human actions. So sometimes people say that, oh, this is because, I cannot do anything about it. It's my karma. But you should know that, of course, you have created the karma, but you need to put effort in. So we as Tibetans have lost our country, but we do not say it's our karma and remain idle. We do our best for the cause of Tibet. And so we should not think that though the actions, because of the actions, the karmas that we have created in the past, we have the experience of happiness, pleasure, and pain. We should not think that use that as an excuse to do nothing. So some lazy people may do that, but we should put effort. Third question comes from Tenzin Lungdok, Class 10, TCB, Ladakh. This is a praise verse, which includes names of the long name of His Holiness Dalai Lama, Jambej. So please explain the best way to restore our peace of mind when we become angry. So as I already said, when you usually reflect on love and compassion on a daily basis and familiarize yourself with them, and also bodhicitta, cultivating and it. So bodhicitta is for the benefit of oneself as well as others, happiness, as we do say in the prayer, in order to fulfill the aims of oneself and others. May I generate the awakening mind, or the spirit of enlightenment. So, regarding myself, for example, I always practice, because of my practice of love and compassion, I feel peaceful within, and that reflects in my smile. So if you let anger overwhelm you or overcome you, you will not be able to fulfill the aims of yourself as well as others. But with bodhicitta, you will have happiness. Temporary. You have peace of mind, happiness now. And bodhicitta can also bring about happiness in others, create happiness in others as well. So, thinking of benefiting others with bodhicitta, you will have benefit in the long and short and long term. So, in the short run, you will have well-being, happiness, and so forth. And ultimately, in the long run, you will reach Buddhahood. And so, this kind of good heart of bodhicitta, the obstacle to that is that of anger and hatred. So if you can actually understand the shortcomings and the disadvantages or the faults of anger and hatred on a daily basis, if you remind yourself of these, the bad side of the anger and hatred, and if you reflect on the advantages and the good side of bodhicitta and daily, then you will be able to familiarize yourself with the bodhicitta and avert anger and hatred. And so if you read Bodhisattvacharya Avatara chapter 6 and 8, you will understand these. So when you create an experience of within yourself whereby you have less anger and hatred and have more compassion and love towards others, there's no other reason, because you want happiness and you don't want suffering, and therefore you put effort in reducing those factors which bring about suffering and increasing those which bring about happiness within yourself. Next is Tenzin Chime from Lower TCV School, Class 10. With due respect to your holiness, our refuge for this and future lives, what is the difference between realizing that whatever is dependently arisen is necessarily empty of intrinsic existence on the basis of reflection of a face in a mirror, and realizing that whatever is dependently arisen is necessarily empty of intrinsic existence in general? So with regard to the reflection of a face in a mirror, that is a very coarse understanding of emptiness. But when you think of things that are related to you, things, environment, external things, as well as yourself, what happens is these things outside and yourself also, they do appear as if they have some kind of objective existence from their own side. So though, with regard to that self, you may have a notion of a substantially existing I, you may be able to reject or refute that, but still you may not be able to overcome the subtle cling to independent existence of an I. And so, with regard to selflessness, in the philosophical schools of Buddhism, we have a degree of understanding of the degree of subtlety amongst these different philosophical schools with regard to selflessness. And so Vaibhashikas, Sautantikas, Chittamatras, and Savatantrika Madhyamakas, they have a grosser understanding or coarser understanding of this selflessness. But the Prasankika Madhyamaka says that nothing whatever has any objective existence as they appear to our perceptions, but they are designated by our conceptual mind. And so that is thinking about the subtle the dependent origination, which leads to subtle understanding of the emptiness of true existence in things and beings. And so, with regard to selflessness or dependent origination, you should understand that there are degrees of subtlety within that amongst the different schools of philosophy. Of course, in the 9th chapter of Bodhisattvacharya Avatara by Shantideva, it teaches about this subtle emptiness, selflessness, but the best text you can study is Madhyamaka Avatara and Master Chandrakirti's and Master Tsongkhapa's explanation in his Illuminating the Intent, where he explains the verses 34, 35, and 36 and so forth, which refers to those of the 4 logical absurdities that you would face if you assert some form of objective existence in things and beings. So what this says is that So with regard to the dispelling the extremes of nihilism and eternalism, according to the Prasangika Madhyamaka school, the appearances dispel the extreme of permanence or existence and emptiness, that of nihilism. So this is, of course, very subtle that we are talking about, the subtle dependent origination as understood by the Prasangika Madhyamakas. So when you understand that things are dependently originated, dependently arisen, then with that understanding you'll be able to reject or refute any form of objective existence. And so by being able to reject any form of objective existence in things and beings, then you realize that emptiness, and having a realized emptiness, you will be able to understand how things are in this subtle way, they dependently arisen. And so, in order to gain insight into this ultimate nature of things, of course, you need also to accumulate merit that supports your understanding and your experience, as I have done in my life. And therefore, as I already mentioned earlier, I am at a stage where I am hopeful of reaching the true cessation. This has not come about by just lying on bed, being lazy, but by thinking over and over about what I have studied. So next question comes from Tenzin Gyume Thundrup from Upper TCV. So, greetings to Your Holiness. What is the difference between great compassion and the altruistic spirit of enlightenment? How should we cultivate them in meditation? Thank you. So the great compassion and bodhicitta. So great compassion becomes the factor which brings about bodhicitta within yourself. So compassion is that desire with which you want others to be free from suffering. And when your courage, when you have more courage to help sentient beings from suffering, then you will come to a point where you say, I will protect them, I will release them from suffering. But when you check within yourself, you find you do not have the ability to relieve sentient beings of their suffering. Even you may be at the level of the path of preparation. You may be able to help others, and then when you reach the path of seeing of a bodhisattva, and you will be able to help others from your own direct experience of emptiness as well. And so the more your experience grows and you journey further up the ladder of the path to enlightenment, you will be able to help others better and more from your experience. And so with that determination to actually work to release sentient beings from suffering, or free them from suffering, and when this grows further, then you will be able to develop bodhicitta within yourself. And so bodhicitta in Tibetan is Chang Chup Sem. So Chang refers to purification of all the defilements, and which is to say all the defilements in terms of the afflictions, mental afflictions, and those of the cognitive obscurations. And so purifying them, you have full knowledge of everything, and you gain all the, or you develop all the positive qualities that a Buddha is qualified with. And so that is your goal of enlightenment, Buddhahood, where you are free from all the defilements and you have all the positive qualities. And with that determination to become a Buddha, you generate bodhicitta within yourself. So there is a wish in the beginning to wishing. There's a wish you have to free other sentient beings, to think of other sentient beings being free from suffering, and then the courage to work for them to be free from suffering. Next is Tenzin Drama from TCV School, Gopalpur, student prefect, class 12. So would Your Holiness explain how best to study that we learn in order to cultivate bodhicitta, the ultimate spirit of enlightenment? So we talk about the great extensive conduct lineage and the profound view lineage, and then the blessing lineage of practice. So of course, with regard to the extensive conduct, you can experience or you can develop bodhicitta on the basis of the sevenfold cause and effect instruction, but the better means is the equaling and exchanging self and others for generating bodhicitta. So for that, Bodhisattva Charya Avatara of Master Shantideva. And so, in order to practice bodhicitta, you should also work against anger. And for that, there is chapter 6 of this book. And then, for the equaling and exchanging self and others to cultivate bodhicitta, you should study chapter 8. As I quoted earlier also, unless you exchange or switch your joy and happiness with the suffering of others, leave alone reaching Buddhahood, even in samsara, you will not have happiness. And so, in order to fulfill the aims of oneself and others, as we say, may I generate awakening spirit of enlightenment. So, your own aim will be fulfilled with this bodhicitta and the aims of serving others as well. will be fulfilled by this bodhicitta. Even in dream, you should be able to dedicate yourself to the cultivation of bodhicitta, and not only in this life, but even in the next lives. And therefore, so as you also recited, may the sublime precious bodhicitta grow where it has not yet taken root, and where it has arisen, may it not decline, but increase and enhance ever further. And so the bodhicitta is the best means to bring the fulfillment of the aims of oneself and others. And then you should also, for that cultivation of bodhicitta, you should follow the instruction on equaling, exchanging oneself and others. So self-cherishing attitude, as Lama Chapa says, self-cherishing attitude is the root of all misfortunes, and cherishing others is the root or the cause of all good qualities. So we come across or we encounter unfavorable conditions, unhappiness, and so forth. When we remain selfish, and therefore, as Shantideva says, which intelligent person would feel discouraged to ride the horse of bodhicitta, which brings one from bliss to bliss and does away with all despair. And so, for bodhicitta, you should study Bodhisattva Charyavatara, and for the view of emptiness, the study Madhyamaka Avatara by Master Chandrakirti, entering the middle way. So you should look for people who can explain you these texts. And then the Dharma brothers and sisters should have discussions on these topics. So it doesn't help just to hear about these teachings once, but you should hear them again and again. And having learned, then you should develop you will develop the understanding based on hearing or studying, and then you should use that to develop the understanding based on reflection, and then integrate the teaching. Next question comes from Thupten Rapten, from an MA student from the Dalai Lama Institute of Higher Studies in Bangalore. How can we best avoid becoming depressed? And what is the best practice or treatment for someone suffering depression? So for that, of course, bodhicitta, equaling and exchanging self and others, the greater you have the experience, the stronger this experience is, you will have happiness. But if you have some problem and you become depressed, if you just remain depressed, that doesn't help at all. The depression mostly comes because people are selfishly motivated and they become very narrow-minded, and that creates a very
depression.
Self-focused mind. So if you can think of others' well-being, others' welfare more and more, that will open your heart to others, and that helps to overcome depression. And so you should think about a long-term benefit of, and also reflect on the equaling, exchanging self and others. So that's all. So Your Holiness, as we, the organizing committee, requested you, we have received this teaching to the youth, the students, and also tens of thousands of people from around the world. You have given teaching on the destiny fulfilled by Master Tsongkhapa. So I would like to thank Your Holiness with a sense of great gratitude for your teaching. So not only that, we would also like to thank you profusely from the core of our heart for the incredible teachings. And also, we would like to thank the secretaries and the people from the audiovisual department of Office of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all the 14 the translators who translated or interpreted into the 14 different languages. And we would like to thank all the school teachers, philosophy teachers, dear students, and the rest of the audience for watching this live webcast. And we would like to pray for Your Holiness to live a very long time and continue to give teaching to us. And so, as I have said before, the most important thing is to study and practice the teaching of the Buddha. As it is also said in the prayer for the flourishing of Master Tsongkhapa's tradition, which talks about extensive learning and applying the teaching within yourself. And so it is not enough just to study and learn the teaching, but you need to integrate them in your practice as well. So this doesn't confine to the monastics alone, but also the lay people, male and female, everyone should understand that Buddhism is not only about keeping faith, having faith in the teaching of the Buddha and Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth, but also combining both study and practice of the teaching. And so you should have discussions amongst yourselves. And the texts that I've mentioned, Madhyamaka Avatara and Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, are not only for the monastics who study philosophy in the big monasteries, but also these can be studied by the lay people, male and female, everyone. And so you should study them and have discussions amongst yourself on these books. So these days we have the gadgets, internet and so forth, which you can use. And so the teachings to combining both practice and study should be widely spread among us, everybody, not only monks and nuns. Thank you.